Hello, my name's Marilla Wex, and I'm the narrator of Iona Wishaw's Lane Winslow series. And today I'm going to read you an extract from It Begins in Betrayal. France, April 1943. The crew lay panting at the edge of the clearing, watching, glassy-eyed and stunned, as the roiling orange and red flames engulfed the plane and lit up the night. Thick black smoke rising from the toxic, stinking mess of gasoline, oil and metal surged into the darkness above the inferno. "Good work, Skip," Watson managed. "I thought we were done for." The navigator, shaky and exhausted, pulled off his leather helmet and turned stiffly to look at his commander. Flight Lieutenant Darling grunted, wrenching his eyes away from the obscene horror of the blaze boiling out of his downed plane. Where are the others? He wondered. Are they all here? He knew they'd have to get a move on before shock settled in and immobilized them. "Report," Darling commanded. "Nothing major," Watson said. "Trouser leg torn." "Arm, sir. A scratch," reported Salford, trying to steady his voice. "But the radio's out." "Sir, rear gunner's looking peaky," said Anthony, his anxiety showing. He and Darling had moved him at a run from where he appeared to have fallen near the plane. The engineer had scrambled over to sit by Evans, who was shuddering convulsively. Darling waited a moment, feeling like he could not catch his breath. Had he heard from Belton, the front gunner? At that moment another violent whoosh of flame enveloped the Lancaster, and the men recoiled, throwing their arms across their faces. Darling saw Belton ducking like the others, and felt a momentary relief. "It's going to blow! Move!" Darling yelled. He ran toward Anthony and Evans, and then realized with a sickening thud that the enemy was moving in the shadows just behind them. He pulled out his revolver, wanting to shout another warning, but there was no time. He and Anthony hauled the slack-limbed Evans up between them and frantically made for the cover of the woods, just as the explosion sucked the air out of them and lit up the forest. In a flash that seemed to hover for an eternity, he spotted a farmhouse at the near end of the field, where a dog leapt and barked as though in a silent movie. The only sound he could hear was the roar of his bomber going up. Deafened, the men stumbled deeper into the dark. Darling, the blast still pounding in his ears, felt someone tugging on his sleeve. Anthony's face was near his mouth moving. His words finally came through. "Bosh, sir." Darling looked out to their rear, trying desperately to hear, to understand where the attack was coming from. "Go," he shouted. "Go, go, I'll hold them off." He turned and looked at them, immobilized in the darkness, and caught their hesitation. "Do as I bloody well say!" Why hadn't he seen Jones? Gunfire exploded somewhere near them. Darling struggled to see into the maelstrom of forest and fire as he moved forward, keeping low. Dimly aware of a pain in his left leg, he crouched, waiting for further fire from the attackers. A loud crack burst out from somewhere behind him, and then a spray of bullets whipped to his right. Bloody hell, they'd begun to circle. Had his men gotten away? He struggled to see his own way out, but the thundering flames obliterated sounds, obscuring the attackers. If he shot in any direction, they would know his position. He could hear them calling out, moving in a fan, he guessed. He crawled a few feet to the left and looked behind to where he hoped all his men had found at least a tenuous safety, and then stood up to go after them. He would sling Evans over his shoulder. The fire began to abate, and the moving shadows of his men seemed to fade in the direction of the farmhouse. He leaned over, ready to carry Evans, and in a flash of light from the fire, finding one more source of fuel, he saw his gunner was dead, sprawled and broken, beyond help, looking in death younger than his 18 years. The voices of the attackers were louder, sharper, moving in his direction. He would have to tell the boy's parents, killed instantly, the usual comforting message. In this case it was true. He could see that. Something? But there was another burst of gunfire. He could see a German soldier ahead of his mates, using the failing light of the plane to find the airman who had gotten out. With cold, numb efficiency, Darling took aim, heard his own shot as though from a distance, and saw the German crumple to the ground. After one last glance at rear gunner Evans, he bolted into the darkness after his men.